Open a random skull that's 10,000 years old. Look inside the mouth. There's a good chance you'll find a full set of teeth. Straight, unbroken, no fillings, because nobody had invented fillings. No braces, because nobody had invented braces. And in a huge number of cases, no cavities at all. Now open your own mouth in a mirror tonight. Count the fillings. Count the crowns. Think about the retainer sitting in a drawer somewhere because your teeth grew in crooked and needed to be forced into place with metal wire. We spend more money, more time, and more engineering on dental care than any humans who ever lived before us. Electric toothbrushes, fluoride toothpaste, mouthwash, floss, biannual cleanings, root canals, orthodontics, an entire trillion-dollar global industry built around keeping our teeth functional. And yet the average ancient hunter-gatherer, using none of it, often had a straighter, healthier, more complete set of teeth at age 60 than most modern people have at 30. That is not supposed to make sense. So what did they know that we've forgotten? What did they have that we don't? And more importantly, what did we start doing that ancient humans never did, that broke something in the human mouth that evolution spent millions of years getting right? Here's the assumption almost everyone carries around without examining it. Ancient people had bad teeth, rotting, crooked, falling out by 30, because they didn't have modern dentistry. It's an easy assumption to make, because we associate ancient with primitive, and we associate primitive with worse, in every measurable way. But dental researchers who actually study ancient remains, a field called paleopathology, have found something that flatly contradicts this assumption. Populations of hunter-gatherers, going back tens of thousands of years, show remarkably low rates of tooth decay. We're talking cavity rates, sometimes below 2% of teeth examined. Compare that to modern industrialized populations, where the majority of adults have had at least one cavity, and dental caries is considered the single most common chronic disease on the planet, affecting billions of people globally. That's not a small gap. That's not ancient people had it slightly worse. That's ancient hunter-gatherers having dramatically better oral health than we do, using nothing but their own biology and behavior. So, the story we tell ourselves, that dental science rescued humanity from a mouthful of ancient decay, has the direction backwards in a lot of ways. Something changed human teeth for the worse. And it wasn't the absence of a toothbrush. So if it wasn't a toothbrush keeping ancient mouths healthy, what was it? The answer splits into roughly 4 categories, and each one is going to force you to rethink something you assumed was fixed and unchangeable about human biology. What ancient humans ate. What ancient humans chewed. What ancient humans actually did to clean their teeth, because, and this is the part that surprises people, they weren't doing nothing. And finally, something structural, something about how the human jaw itself develops, that has almost nothing to do with cleaning and everything to do with growth. Let's take them one at a time, starting with the biggest lever of all, food. Tooth decay is not random bad luck. It's a chemical process with a very specific mechanism, and understanding that mechanism is the key to understanding almost everything in this video. Your mouth is full of bacteria. That's normal. It's supposed to be that way. Some of those bacteria, most notably a species called Streptococcus mutans, feed on sugar. When they eat sugar, they produce acid as a waste product. That acid dissolves the mineral structure of your enamel. Do that enough times, consistently enough, and you get a cavity. It's a simple equation. Sugar in the mouth, frequently, over time, equals acid, equals decay. Now here's the part that reframes the entire topic. The human diet, for the overwhelming majority of our species' existence, contained almost no concentrated sugar. Ancient hunter-gatherers ate meat, fish, wild vegetables, nuts, roots, and seasonal fruit. Wild fruit, by the way, is nothing like the fruit in your grocery store. Modern agricultural fruit has been selectively bred over thousands of years specifically to be sweeter, larger, and less fibrous than its wild ancestors. A wild apple from 10,000 years ago was small, tart, and mostly not worth the effort, compared to a domesticated modern apple, which is essentially candy compared to its ancestor. So ancient humans weren't avoiding sugar because they had willpower. They were avoiding sugar because concentrated sugar barely existed in their environment. Their bacteria had almost nothing to work with. Then, agriculture happened, and this is one of the most well-documented shifts in the entire archaeological record of human health. Around 10 to 12,000 years ago, as different populations around the world began farming, their diet shifted heavily toward grains: wheat, barley, rice, corn. Skeletal and dental remains from this transition show a measurable, sometimes dramatic increase in cavities almost immediately. Why? Because starchy grains break down into simple sugars in the mouth through an enzyme in your saliva called amylase. A mouthful of bread is, chemically speaking, not that different from a mouthful of sugar by the time your saliva finishes with it. Agricultural populations were now eating a diet that was, for the first time in human history, constantly feeding the bacteria that produce decay-causing acid, and it got dramatically worse again during the modern era, when refined sugar became cheap, abundant, and present in nearly everything we eat. The dental health decline of the last 2 centuries, in particular, tracks almost perfectly with global sugar consumption data. This is not a coincidence. This is cause and effect, playing out over 10,000 years, one bite at a time. Think about the texture of a typical modern meal. Soft bread, ground meat, mashed or steamed vegetables, pre-cut everything, foods engineered specifically to require minimal chewing. Now think about what a wild diet actually demanded of the jaw. Raw or minimally cooked meat that had to be torn and gnawed directly off bone. Tough, fibrous wild plants, roots and tubers that hadn't been bred for tenderness. Nuts that needed to be cracked and ground down using the back molars, sometimes shell fragments included. This wasn't just harder to eat. It was mechanically abrasive in a way that modern food simply isn't. And that abrasiveness did something remarkable. It physically scrubbed the teeth during the act of eating. Fibrous plant material acts almost like a natural toothbrush bristle, working across the tooth surface and along the gum line with every bite, dislodging food particles and disrupting the bacterial film, what we now call plaque, before it has a chance to build up and mineralize into the hard yellow substance we call tartar. Modern soft food does almost none of this. It requires so little chewing that it barely touches the tooth surface, and much of it is sticky and starchy enough to cling to teeth rather than scrub them. There's a term researchers use for this: dental attrition. Refers to the gradual wearing down of tooth surfaces from chewing tough material over a lifetime. And here's where it gets genuinely fascinating, because ancient human teeth show levels of attrition that would look almost alarming to a modern dentist. Heavily worn molars, flattened chewing surfaces. And yet those same worn-down teeth are frequently cavity-free. The wear pattern and the decay pattern are telling 2 completely different stories. The wear tells you the diet was tough and demanding. The lack of decay tells you that same toughness was actively protecting the tooth. It's a genuine trade-off, and it's one that anthropologists still study closely, because it flips the modern intuition on its head. We tend to think worn down means damaged, but for most of human history, a heavily worn tooth was often a healthy tooth, precisely because of what caused the wear. This also connects to something else worth pausing on: saliva. Chewing tough, fibrous food stimulates significantly more saliva production than chewing soft food. And saliva isn't just a lubricant, it's an active defense system. It's slightly alkaline, which helps neutralize the acid produced by decay-causing bacteria. It contains minerals, particularly calcium and phosphate, that actively help remineralize and repair microscopic weak spots in enamel before they become full cavities. It contains antibacterial compounds that help keep the bacterial population in the mouth in check. A diet that demands heavy chewing produces more saliva, more consistently, throughout the day. A modern diet of soft, pre-processed food barely triggers this system at all. So ancient humans weren't just avoiding sugar and mechanically scrubbing their teeth with fibrous food, they were also flooding their mouths with their own built-in chemical defense system, simply as a side effect of eating normally. Their toothpaste, in a very real sense, was already in their mouths. Evolution put it there. It just needed to be triggered by the right kind of food. Let's talk about the chew stick, because this is one of the most quietly remarkable inventions in human history, and almost nobody outside of dental anthropology has heard of it. Archaeological and historical evidence for chew sticks, small twigs, frayed at one end into a brush-like structure, used to actively scrub the teeth, appears independently in ancient Babylon, ancient Egypt, ancient China, across sub-Saharan Africa, and in the Islamic world, where a specific chew stick called the miswak, typically cut from the Salvadora persica tree, remains in active use by hundreds of millions of people today, not as a historical curiosity, but as a genuinely functional. The Ebers Papyrus, an Egyptian medical text from around 1550 BCE, contains references to dental hygiene practices and tooth cleaning pastes made from ingredients like crushed eggshell and pumice, used specifically to whiten and clean teeth. This is not a fringe or isolated practice. This is a behavior that emerged independently, over and over again, in unconnected human populations across thousands of years, which is usually a strong signal in anthropology that you're looking at something driven by genuine functional necessity rather than cultural coincidence. And the miswak specifically deserves attention because modern chemical analysis has found that the Salvadora persica tree contains natural antibacterial compounds along with abrasive silica particles that mechanically help clean the tooth surface, and even natural fluoride-like compounds that support enamel strength. Multiple modern dental studies comparing miswak use to conventional toothbrushing have found it performs comparably in reducing plaque and bacterial load, in some cases outperforming a standard toothbrush when used correctly. This wasn't superstition. This was several thousand years of trial and observation, converging on a plant that happens to be genuinely, chemically effective at the exact task people were using it for. Discovered and refined long before anyone understood what a bacterium even was. Beyond dedicated tools, other cultures used what was available. Charcoal and ash, mildly abrasive and mildly antibacterial, were used as tooth-cleaning powders in various traditions, including ancient Rome and parts of Africa and Asia. And interestingly, charcoal-based toothpaste has seen a resurgence in modern niche dental products. Though modern dentists generally caution it can be too abrasive for regular use without guidance. Certain cultures chewed specific resins or barks with natural antimicrobial properties. Coastal and island populations sometimes used abrasive sand or salt as a cleaning agent. None of this was formalized dental science. It was empirical trial and error, refined and passed down exactly the way traditional medicine and traditional food knowledge were passed down, through observation, practice, and the accumulated experience of what actually worked, transmitted across generations without ever needing to be written down or chemically explained. Here's a statistic that should genuinely unsettle you. In many modern industrialized populations, a majority of people either need or have had orthodontic treatment, braces, retainers, jaw expanders, to correct crowded, crooked, or misaligned teeth. Wisdom teeth extraction is so common in some countries, it's treated almost as a routine rite of passage. Now look at the archaeological record. Ancient hunter-gatherer skulls, going back tens of thousands of years, overwhelmingly show straight teeth, properly aligned jaws, and, this is the detail that surprises people most, plenty of room for wisdom teeth to erupt normally, without impaction, without needing to be surgically removed. Crowded teeth and impacted wisdom teeth are not an ancient universal human condition we've simply gotten better at fixing. They are, to a significant degree, a modern problem that ancient humans mostly did not have. So what changed? It isn't genetics. Human jaw genetics haven't meaningfully shifted in the relevant time frame. It's development. Specifically, it's what your jaw is doing, or not doing, during childhood. The human jaw isn't a fixed, pre-programmed shape that just appears regardless of what you do with it. Like a muscle, it develops in response to mechanical stress during childhood, specifically the repeated force of hard chewing. Researchers studying jaw and facial development have found that populations who chew tougher, harder, more demanding food during childhood tend to develop wider, more robust jaws, with enough room for all 32 adult teeth to erupt in proper alignment. Populations raised on soft, heavily processed food, which describes most children in industrialized countries today, tend to develop narrower jaws because the bone and muscle structure never received the mechanical loading signal that tells the body, build this wider. A narrower jaw simply doesn't have enough physical space for a full, straight set of adult teeth. The teeth come in overlapping, twisted, crowded, because there isn't room, and wisdom teeth, the last teeth to erupt, are often the ones that pay the price, becoming impacted because the jaw ran out of space before they even had a chance to come in. This is sometimes called the soft food hypothesis of malocclusion, and it's gained significant traction in evolutionary dentistry and orthodontic research over the past few decades. It reframes crooked teeth not as a random genetic misfortune that modern medicine heroically corrects, but as a developmental consequence of a diet that changed faster than human jaw development did. It also connects to something else worth mentioning briefly. Breastfeeding duration and infant feeding practices appear to play a role in early jaw and palate development as well, with some researchers linking earlier weaning and heavy reliance on soft processed infant food to narrower palate development compared to populations with longer breastfeeding periods and earlier introduction of tougher solid foods. None of this means modern orthodontics is bad. It isn't. It's a genuinely effective solution to a genuinely real problem. But it is, in a very real sense, a technological patch for a problem that our own dietary shift created in the first place. Ancient humans didn't need braces for the same reason they didn't need reading glasses to see a horizon 10,000 years ago, because the environment their bodies developed in matched the demands their biology evolved to meet. Ancient dental health was not perfect, and pretending otherwise does a disservice to the actual science. Severe tooth wear from that abrasive diet sometimes wore teeth down so far it exposed the sensitive inner pulp, causing painful infections and abscesses, and without modern antibiotics or dental surgery, a serious dental abscess could genuinely be life-threatening, capable of spreading infection into the jaw, the bloodstream, even the brain. Archaeological remains do show evidence of dental abscesses, tooth loss from trauma or severe wear, and, in a detail that sounds almost unbelievable but is well documented, evidence of prehistoric dentistry. A skeleton discovered in Pakistan, dated to around 7000 BCE, shows a molar with a hole drilled into it using a flint drill, almost certainly to relieve the pain of an infected tooth. This is, as far as researchers can tell, one of the earliest known examples of dental intervention in human history. Proof that even without modern tools, ancient humans recognized dental pain as a problem worth actively, surgically addressing. There's also a specific irony worth mentioning. Agricultural populations, despite eating a decay-promoting starchy diet, actually tended to show less severe tooth wear than hunter-gatherers, because grain-based food, while sugary in its breakdown, was often softer than raw wild meat and fibrous roots. So, agricultural populations swapped one dental problem, abrasive wear, for another, arguably worse one, cavities and gum disease from constant starch exposure, combined with denser population living, which also increased bacterial transmission between people. There's no single ancient diet that was universally perfect for dental health. What's consistent across the record, though, is that ancient dental problems were overwhelmingly mechanical and wear-related, rather than decay-related, while modern dental problems are overwhelmingly decay and gum disease-related, driven specifically by sugar and soft, processed food. The type of problem changed even more dramatically than the overall severity did. So what do you actually do with all of this? Because the point of understanding ancient dental health isn't nostalgia for a pre-toothbrush past. Nobody's suggesting you throw out your toothpaste and start gnawing on raw meat and twigs. Modern dentistry, for all the ways it's compensating for a modern diet, is also genuinely more effective at treating serious problems than anything available to ancient humans. Full stop. But there are real, evidence-backed lessons buried in this history that modern dental and nutritional science increasingly takes seriously. Reducing frequency of sugar exposure, not just total amount, but how often your teeth are bathed in sugar throughout the day, matters enormously. Because it's frequency, not just quantity, that determines how much acid-producing time bacteria get. Chewing harder, more fibrous whole foods, rather than exclusively soft processed food, supports both natural mechanical cleaning and healthy saliva production. And there's growing interest in myofunctional and early childhood approaches to jaw development, encouraging harder chewing and even specific chewing exercises in children, specifically to support wider jaw growth and reduce future crowding and orthodontic need. An idea that traces its evidentiary roots directly back to exactly the kind of paleopathology we've been discussing throughout this video. There's something almost humbling in all of this. We built an entire trillion-dollar global industry to fix a problem that, in large part, we created ourselves by changing our food faster than our biology could adapt to the change. Ancient humans, without a single dental degree between them, without fluoride, without a single X-ray machine, arrived independently, repeatedly, across unconnected cultures on different continents, at a set of behaviors that were, in their own environmental context, remarkably close to optimal. Chew stick technology developed independently on multiple continents. Dietary patterns that happened to protect teeth as a side effect of simply eating what was locally available. Jaw development that happened to produce straight teeth as a side effect of childhood diets that demanded real chewing effort. None of it was designed as dental care. All of it functioned as dental care anyway, because it emerged from a diet and lifestyle that matched the conditions human biology actually evolved under. So the next time someone tells you ancient humans had terrible teeth because they didn't have toothbrushes, you'll know the real answer is almost the exact opposite. They had a diet that scrubbed their teeth with every bite, saliva working overtime as a built-in chemical defense system, independently invented cleaning tools sophisticated enough that some of them are still used by hundreds of millions of people today, and a childhood diet demanding enough to physically grow a jaw with room for every tooth to sit exactly where it belonged. We didn't out-engineer ancient dental health. In a lot of ways, we're still just trying to catch up to it. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside.